Hello, and welcome to Remote Stories, the show where we interview remote workers from all over the world. I'm Preston Wickersham with Remote, the company helping businesses of all sizes employ global teams. With me today from Ireland is Maggie Ahearne, a senior product manager at HubSpot. Maggie, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Preston.
Absolutely. So, Maggie, you've been working remotely for about 5 years now, a couple different companies. How has this last year been different for you?
Oh, this last year has definitely been different. It's gone from having a really lovely work-life balance to sort of crisis mode. So I would definitely say to anyone who has found this last year challenging, that it's been challenging for everybody, including the people who have been working remotely for a long time. So stick with it, and the areas that you find have been really positive for you, those will just get better if this is something that you continue to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been working for remotely for several years as well, and it has been really different to, see that being locked out of all the things that, you normally would be able to take advantage of, that freedom and flexibility, it's really, really not there as much. What would you anticipate changing as, maybe more of the world has gotten a taste of remote work and anticipating a lot of the benefits that remote work can bring once, the pandemic sort of comes to an end and people have more freedom and flexibility to move around, what do you think will happen then? How do you think the world of remote work will adjust?
So I think a lot of organizations, as they move to, they'll just be a bit more inclusive. They'll be more inclusive of people who are working remotely or working flexibly. So, and we'll also, I think, we'll see a shift from the organizations who would have traditionally been remote, that will expand into all different industries. So I think a lot of, I think in the past it's been a lot of the big tech companies who've been very open to remote, but that's going to change so that other types of organizations will also be remote.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I can certainly see it. So bringing it back to you a little bit and your experiences working remotely and your life working remotely. Can you tell me any what unique life experiences have you been able to enjoy because you've been working remotely for these years?
So one of the unique things that I've really been able to enjoy is just really helping other people navigate the world of remote work. So I've always been like a huge advocate of women in tech, and I've been involved in a lot of different mentorship programs, a lot of leadership programs in that space. And a lot of women have had to put their careers on hold because when they've had children, or they've actually made that choice because they've felt that they can't have both, and they just have felt that it's not been a realistic option. So I think what's interesting about flexible working is that it gives women and men a new option. And really, in answering your question about a unique life experience, I feel that the unique experience for me is that I've been able to help other people. I've been trying to use my voice over the last few years to help people who are in a similar situation to myself, and just sort of provide that information to them about how they can have remote working and also have a family. And I think as the vaccine rolls out and things start to go back to normal, I really hope that I can continue to support people around this.
That's great. No, that's really great. Awesome. So, as I mentioned earlier, you're living in Kilkenny, Ireland. So, why should other people want to live and work remotely in Kilkenny? What makes that community special for you?
Kilkenny it's so beautiful. It's an old medieval city. There's a huge medieval castle in the center of Kilkenny. And historically, Kilkenny's actually been really known for its creativity and creative people. So what I love is that you can see that Kilkenny has evolved in all aspects of creativity. So there's the multiple Oscar-nominated company Cartoon Saloon, who are creating animated movies. There's also a huge amount of web design. There's companies like Red Lemonade. There's also companies doing video production such as Glasseye, but there's also all of the traditional art forms as well, like pottery and other forms of more traditional art forms. So there's so many people in Kilkenny who are either freelancing or they're working remotely, or there's people who are commuting to Dublin a couple of days a week because Dublin is not that far from Kilkenny, and there's a few different virtual office spaces here in Kilkenny. So it's absolutely perfect. It also has really, really lovely bars and restaurants because it's traditionally very, very much a tourist city. So it's really great.
Sounds delightful, and now I want to visit or spend a few months there because, hey, remote work, we can do that. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, so remote work, you're saying it's a very creative and flexible community. Have you seen, this advent of remote work either over the last year or just over the last few years? Have you seen remote work kind of creating changes in Kilkenny? Has it had an impact on that community for others?
Yeah, it definitely has. I think, the stage that I am in my life, I've seen a lot of friends or people that I know in Kilkenny who are starting to move back to Kilkenny or other towns close to Kilkenny because they can work remotely. Um, and there are trains that go up to Dublin, so people, have that sort of flexibility that they can go up to the office even once a week or a couple of times a month if they want. So it's great, and you've seen things like Bank of Ireland. They have invested in creating hubs that anyone can use to work remotely. So it's really good. And just seeing that age demographic returning to Kilkenny, and it's just a really wonderful thing.
That's very cool to hear that the investments are coming from, all sides to make sure that remote work is accessible for
Hmm.
anybody who wants to do it. And it is really interesting to hear that, that people of all ages are, returning and being able to work from these places without having to give up, like we were talking about, opportunities that may have existed in larger hubs or larger cities because, now you can access those things
Yeah.
from more places in the world. So that is cool to see that Kilkenny is benefiting from that shift. Has there been any? I mean, you've been in this space for a few years. Has there been any significant challenge for you with remote work life? Is there like something that you struggle with, or something that you had to overcome to get your remote working life to be the way you wanted it to be?
Probably the biggest thing is kind of, forging those deep connections in your workplace. So it can definitely be more difficult to do that. And I actually moved from a company where I was working fully remote to a company where I was trying to get to the office, at least one day a week, so I could meet with my colleagues. Um, I think also it can be a little bit foggier to really see a career path when you're working remotely. So I think that you just really have to invest a little bit more in building those relationships and in, you know, taking the first step in really setting yourself some goals and putting together a career path for yourself. And I think you just have to be a little bit more proactive about that.
That's really good advice. And yeah, I think that's something that is, a lot of people have discovered is that, some of the things about, company culture and relationships don't happen as automatically as they might in an office. It doesn't mean that, that the office was better, just that, now we have to be more deliberate about it. We have to think
Mm.
about things that we didn't think about before. So, yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from with that. Uh, Last question, Maggie. So if you could give one piece of advice to companies with remote workers that maybe are deciding to push farther into remote work or to extend hybrid working or fully remote working options, over the next few months and beyond, to make those options more accessible for people, what piece of advice would you give those companies?
So I definitely say to companies to build processes around career development and how that works for remote workers. Also, just to build processes that are inclusive and listen to feedback from the employees, both the office-based and the remote employees. There's probably a bit of a tendency for companies to just think, when they think about remote working, they're very focused on those remote workers, but they have to think about how that impacts everybody within the organization. So not to assume that it's going to work, it has to be planned carefully. It has to be planned. It has to be treated like any other change management project, and really not to just throw technology at the problem, because the technology should be there to support your processes and how your organization supports the flexible workers, and not the other way around. You don't want to start saying, okay, I'm after hearing about this great tool and it's going to solve all our problems. You need to understand and build in your processes before you can decide on that technology to support it. But once you get to that place, it's going to be much, much easier for you to actually decide what tools are going to work to support that for you. So I think that that's probably my main piece of advice.
That's a great piece of advice, and it's a great place to end for us. So, thanks again so much for joining me today, Maggie.
Thank you. Thank you.